The grand amphitheater of Cronus Prime had never seen such a turnout, and believe me, I had attended every single one of these spectacles for the past 12 cycles. My name is Pelix, Junior Archivist for the Galactic Council, and my job was to document history as it happened. What I was about to witness would indeed make history, just not the kind anyone expected. 47 star systems. That is how many civilizations were tuned into this broadcast. The number kept climbing on my data slate, glowing with that smug blue light that said, yes, the entire known universe is watching. The Empire had spared no expense on the production value either. Hovering cameras, each the size of a small transport pod, drifted through the arena like metallic insects. Their lenses captured every angle, every reflection off the crystalline stage that jutted from the center of the amphitheater like a massive transparent blade. Commander Veshkara stood at the edge of that stage, her scales catching the light in ways that probably looked very impressive to everyone watching at home. She was Saurian, which meant she stood roughly 8 feet tall, had enough teeth to open a dental clinic, and possessed that particular reptilian smugness that came from being at the top of the military food chain. Her crimson uniform was decorated with so many medals that I genuinely worried about her spine. Each piece of metal represented a conquered world, a defeated fleet, a subjugated species. Very intimidating, very theatrical, very Veshkara. The audience, packed into every available seat and floating platform, buzzed with anticipation. Hundreds of species represented here. The insectoid Clockrexians clicked their mandibles in excitement. The gelatinous morphids quivered in their containment suits. Even the usually stoic granite lords had positioned themselves for optimal viewing. Everyone wanted to see the human.
Yes, the human.
Humanity. That strange little species from the edge of the Orion Spur who had been causing problems for the Empire for the past 3 solar years. They had refused annexation, destroyed 2 Imperial fleets, and generally made themselves a nuisance. The Empire had finally captured one of their soldiers, and now they were going to make an example of him. Live, in front of everyone, because nothing says legitimate government quite like public humiliation broadcast across half the galaxy. The lighting dimmed. Oh, very dramatic. A single spotlight pierced the darkness, illuminating the entry tunnel. The crowd fell silent, which was impressive considering there were roughly 10,000 beings present, and at least 40% of them did not actually have mouths. Veshkara raised one clawed hand, her translator amulet amplifying her voice to thunder proportions. Citizens of the Galactic Empire, she announced, drawing out each word like she was savoring expensive wine. Today marks a turning point in our glorious campaign. Today we show the universe what happens to those who defy the natural order. Today we present to you a specimen of the species that dared to challenge us. She paused. The cameras zoomed in on her face. Someone in production really understood pacing. Bring out the human. 2 Crolusian guards emerged from the tunnel. They were hauling something between them, or rather someone, the human soldier. They were not being gentle about it either. His feet dragged across the polished floor, leaving faint scuff marks that some poor maintenance worker would have to buff out later. The guards were enormous, easily 12 feet tall, with 4 arms apiece and exoskeletons that could deflect plasma fire. The human looked tiny between them. They threw him onto the crystalline stage. He tumbled, rolled once, and came to a stop in the center of the spotlight. The crowd leaned forward. I adjusted my recording equipment, making sure to capture every detail. This was history after all. The human stood up. That was the first sign that something was off. He should have been broken, exhausted, terrified. The Empire had very specific protocols for processing prisoners, and none of them involved comfort or dignity. But this one, this Marcus Chen, according to my briefing files, simply brushed himself off. He was wearing what remained of a military uniform, dark blue with various tears and burns. His hair was short, black and somehow still neat despite everything. He had that peculiar human facial structure, with 2 forward-facing eyes that suggested a predator species, though no one had taken that seriously until recently. Marcus looked around the amphitheater. Then he smiled. Not a grimace. Not a desperate attempt at bravery. An actual smile, the kind you give when you are in on a joke that nobody else has figured out yet. He stretched his shoulders, rolled his neck until it made a series of small popping sounds that my audio equipment picked up with crystal clarity, and then he waved at one of the cameras. He waved. The audience murmured in confusion. Veshkara's expression flickered, just for a moment. Her tail, which had been swishing with confident authority, went still. I made a note in my files. Subject displaying unexpected behavior. No signs of fear or distress, possible psychological conditioning or chemical enhancement. Or maybe, just maybe, he knew something we did not. The broadcast counters on my slate continued climbing. 51 systems now. Word was spreading. Everyone wanted to see the human brought low. Everyone wanted to watch the Empire demonstrate its power. The propaganda machine was running at full capacity, and Marcus Chen stood in the center of it all, looking for all the universe like a man who had just arrived at a party he had been planning for months. Veshkar regained her composure. She stepped forward, her claws clicking against the crystalline surface. The cameras tracked her movement, then split screen to show both her and the human. Perfect framing, perfect lighting. The production team deserved bonuses. "You stand before the Galactic Council," Veshkara declared, her voice dripping with authority. "You stand before the representatives of 47 civilized systems. You stand accused of terrorism, piracy, and armed resistance against the lawful expansion of the Empire." Marcus nodded along like she was reciting a grocery list. "Uh-huh. Sure. Lawful. That is definitely the word I would use." The sarcasm in his tone was so thick you could have used it as hull plating. Several audience members chittered nervously. Humans were not supposed to be sarcastic. They were supposed to be primitive, aggressive, and easy to intimidate. That was what the briefings had said. The briefings, as it turned out, had missed a few things. Veshkara's eyes narrowed. "You will answer for your crimes, human. The universe is watching. Your defiance ends here." Marcus looked directly into the nearest camera. His smile widened. "Yeah," he said. "They are watching. You got that part right." And that was when I realized we had made a terrible, terrible mistake. Veshkara was not accustomed to being mocked. You could tell by the way her scales flushed a deeper shade of crimson, which in Saurian biology indicated either extreme anger or extreme embarrassment. Possibly both. She circled Marcus like a predator sizing up prey, except the prey was standing there with his hands clasped behind his back like he was waiting for a bus. "Tell us, human," she hissed, her voice amplified across every speaker in the amphitheater. "How many ships did your pathetic fleet lose in the Battle of Kendrick Station?" Marcus tilted his head, considering the question with theatrical sincerity. "Well, Commander, that depends on your definition of lost. Are we talking destroyed, damaged, or just really embarrassed? Because if we are counting embarrassment, your flagship definitely qualifies after it ran into that asteroid field while trying to chase our scouts." The audience made a collective sound that I can only describe as shocked wheezing. Several species did not even have the biological capability for wheezing, but they managed it anyway. I checked my slate. 58 systems now. The viewership was climbing faster than a Zephyrian trade index during spice season. Veshkara's jaw clenched so hard I heard her teeth grinding from my observation post. "You destroyed 3 Imperial cruisers. 1,700 soldiers died. You think this is amusing?" "No, actually," Marcus replied, his tone shifting to something almost sincere. "I think it is tragic. I think it is tragic that your empire sent 1,700 people to die for a territorial expansion that nobody asked for. But hey, what do I know? I am just a primitive human who apparently does not understand civilized warfare."
Oh, he was good.
The sarcasm was back, but now it had teeth. Real teeth, not the decorative kind that Veshkara was currently bearing. 2 more figures emerged onto the stage. High Chancellor Thornix moved with the deliberate grace of someone who had practiced imposing entrances in front of a mirror. He was Etherian, which meant he looked like someone had taken a cloud, given it delusions of grandeur, and stuffed it into ceremonial robes. His species communicated partially through color shifts in their vapor-like bodies, and right now he was glowing a confident gold. Ambassador Quilnara followed behind him. She was Viridian, plant-based, with flowing appendages that resembled flowering vines more than arms. Her species prided itself on diplomacy and wisdom, which made her presence here particularly ironic, given that this entire spectacle was about as diplomatic as a plasma grenade to the face. "Perhaps," Thornix said, his voice resonating like wind through a canyon, "we should discuss human military tactics. Explain to the watching civilizations how your species justifies such aggressive behavior." Marcus brightened visibly. "Oh, you want to talk tactics?" "Sure. Absolutely. I love this topic." He turned to address the nearest camera directly. My recording equipment captured every word, every facial expression, every carefully calculated gesture. 63 systems now. Someone in the outer rim had just tuned in. "So here is the thing about human military doctrine," Marcus began, pacing across the crystalline stage like a lecturer addressing students. We have this concept called strategic stupidity. It is a technical term. Very advanced. Basically, we do things that are so monumentally idiotic that the enemy assumes it must be a trick, which makes them overcomplicate their response, which means we win. Quilnara's vines rustled with confusion. That makes no logical sense. Exactly, Marcus said, pointing at her with finger guns. Actual finger guns. He made the little clicking sound with his mouth and everything. You just proved my point. See, your problem is that you all think warfare is this elegant chess game played by sophisticated civilizations. Meanwhile, we are over here playing checkers with live ammunition and setting the board on fire. I checked my slate again. The analytics were fascinating. Viewership had not just increased, it had exploded. 71 systems. The broadcast was trending across every major network. Social feeds were lighting up. Everyone wanted to know what the human would say next. Veshkora tried to regain control. Your fleet is outnumbered. Your colonies are isolated. Your resistance is futile. Why do you continue to fight? Marcus stopped pacing. He looked at her with an expression that somehow managed to convey both pity and amusement. Because you asked us to surrender on Tuesday, Commander, and humans do not like Tuesdays. Bad day for that kind of request. Should have tried Wednesday. We are much more reasonable on Wednesdays. This is absurd. Thornex rumbled, his vapor body flickering orange with irritation. You are stalling. You are deflecting with humor to avoid confronting your inevitable defeat. Am I though? Marcus asked. Or am I just a naturally charming individual who happens to be very comfortable with public speaking? Tell me, Chancellor, how many people are watching right now? Your people must have excellent analytics. State-of-the-art equipment, very impressive production values, by the way. The lighting is phenomenal. I nearly dropped my slate. He was right. The production values were excellent. We had 74 holocams running synchronized patterns. The audio mixing was flawless. The crystalline stage refracted light in mathematically perfect angles. This was not just a prisoner interrogation. This was a performance. And we had built him the perfect theater. Quilnara seemed to sense the shift in dynamics. Her diplomatic training was probably screaming warnings. Perhaps we should discuss terms of your world's surrender. Surely you see the wisdom in negotiation. Marcus laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a desperate one. A genuine, from-the-belly laugh that echoed through the amphitheater and probably translated poorly into 16 different languages. Ambassador, with all due respect, and I mean that in the traditional human way, which is to say none whatsoever, negotiation requires both parties to have something the other wants. What exactly do you think you have that we want? Your survival, Veshkara snapped. Cute, Marcus replied. Really, adorable. But see, here is the thing about humanity that your intelligence reports probably missed. We are not actually that attached to individual survival. We are much more interested in collective spite. Someone threatens us, and we get stubborn. Someone attacks us, and we get creative. Someone tries to humiliate us on live television across 75 star systems and He trailed off, looking at one of the cameras with that same knowing smile. We get even. My slate was vibrating with notification alerts. 79 systems. 81. 84. This was the most watched broadcast in Galactic Council history. Everyone was tuning in to watch the Empire break a human soldier. Everyone was seeing something entirely different unfold. Veshkara stepped closer to Marcus, towering over him by nearly 3 feet. Your bravado will not save you, human. This ends one way. Marcus looked up at her, completely unfazed. Commander, I hate to break this to you, but it already ended. You just have not figured out how yet. The way he said it, calm and certain, sent a chill through the amphitheater. Even I felt it. And I was just an archivist with decent recording equipment and a front row seat to whatever was about to happen. Veshkara opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus was not finished. Question for you though, quick one. When was the last time your sensor technicians checked for human stealth signatures? The commander froze. Because, Marcus continued, his smile widening into something predatory, I have been transmitting on an open channel since you dragged me onto this lovely stage. And you have got what? 87 systems watching now. A lot of people paying attention. A lot of sensors pointed this way. Makes for excellent cover, really. All that electromagnetic noise. High Chancellor Thornex's vapor body turned a deep alarmed purple. Impossible. Our security protocols are designed to stop obvious intrusions, sure, Marcus interrupted, but you know what they are not designed to stop? A cooperative broadcaster. See, I am not hacking your systems. I am using them. You built me a transmitter that reaches half the galaxy, and I have just been casually mentioning fleet positions, patrol routes and defensive weak points for the past 10 minutes. The crystalline stage suddenly felt very cold. Ambassador Quilnara's vines went rigid. Surely you are bluffing. Marcus checked an imaginary watch on his wrist. We will find out in about 90 seconds. The silence that followed Marcus's statement was the kind of silence that precedes very bad things. I had heard it before once, when a reactor core on Station Velik started making sounds it was not supposed to make. That same quality of dread, of realization, of knowing that the universe was about to become significantly more complicated. Veshkara activated her wrist communicator with a speed that would have been impressive if it was not so obviously panicked. Command, run a full spectrum analysis. Check for unauthorized transmissions, human encryption patterns, anything that... A junior officer's voice crackled through, high-pitched with stress. Commander, we are detecting multiple anomalies in Sector 7. Wait, Sector 9 as well. Ma'am, there are human stealth signatures appearing on long-range sensors. Lots of them. Marcus made a little checkmark gesture in the air. There it is. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Not the fun kind of chaos either. Like when someone spills fermented Clarixian nectar at a diplomatic function. This was the bad kind, where 10,000 beings from different species all start panicking in their own unique biological ways. The Morphids began wobbling uncontrollably. The Granite Lord started transmitting distress frequencies that hurt my audio receptors. Someone, I think it was one of the Zephyrian delegates, actually fainted, which was impressive considering they did not have a traditional circulatory system. Impossible, Thornex boomed, his vapor body now flickering between 6 different colors, none of them good. Our orbital defenses would have detected an approaching fleet. Our sensors cover everything within 3 light minutes of Cronus Prime. Marcus held up one finger. Correction. Your sensors covered everything. Past tense. You know the communications relay I mentioned? The one orbiting your third moon? The relay that was definitely not sabotaged 2 weeks ago during a routine maintenance check? Yeah, about that. My slate was going absolutely insane with alerts. 92 systems watching now. Every major news network was streaming this live. Social feeds across the galaxy were exploding with speculation, analysis, and a concerning number of memes that were already being generated about Veshkara's expression. Cut the broadcast, the commander snarled at someone off stage. Cut it now. They cannot, Marcus said cheerfully. Well, they can, but it would be such an obviously guilty move that every civilization watching would immediately know you are in serious trouble. Plus, I may have done something creative with your broadcast encryption. If you shut it down manually, the system defaults to open transmission on all frequencies. Everything in your command center gets broadcast. Every tactical screen, every communication, every panicked order. Your choice, really. Quilnara's diplomatic training finally kicked in. This is an act of war. No, Ambassador, Marcus replied, his tone suddenly sharp. What you did was an act of war. You attacked our colonies. You bombed civilian stations. You demanded our surrender. This is just us being really, really good at our jobs. Veshkara was pulling up holographic displays, her claws moving frantically across control surfaces. I could see the tactical readouts from my position. Dozens of contacts, maybe hundreds, emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. Human ships, sleek and predatory, dropping their stealth fields in coordinated waves. They were surrounding Cronus Prime in a formation that looked less like an attack pattern and more like a noose. How long? The commander asked, her voice barely controlled. How long have you been planning this? Marcus smiled that infuriating smile again. Oh, you mean the part where I let myself get captured? That was month 3 of the war. Took some convincing to get command to approve it. They thought it was too risky. I said, look, these people are so obsessed with symbolism and public displays that they will absolutely put me on galactic television if they catch me. And once I am on galactic television, I am in the best protected communications hub in the Empire, with guards who are trained to keep people out, not to keep signals in. High Chancellor Thornex was cycling through colors so fast he looked like a malfunctioning light display. You allowed yourself to be captured. You endured weeks of interrogation, of imprisonment. All for this. Interrogation was boring, Marcus admitted. Your people kept asking the same questions. Where are the human fleets? What are our defensive capabilities? When will we surrender? I mostly recited old Earth movies and saw how long it took anyone to notice. Nobody did, by the way. Your interrogators are not big on classic cinema. The tactical display showed more human ships appearing. They were not attacking, I noticed, just positioning themselves, creating overlapping fields of fire, blocking escape routes. It was remarkably polite as military encirclements go. A priority alert flashed on my slate. 98 systems now. This had become the most watched event in recorded galactic history. Beings who had never cared about the Empire, who had barely known humans existed, were now glued to their screens watching a single human soldier casually dismantle an entire propaganda operation. Launch all fighters, Veshkara ordered. Activate planetary shields. Get the fleet into defensive formation. Marcus coughed politely. About your fleet, the one that was supposed to be in orbit. I may have mentioned their patrol routes during my very entertaining tangent about human checkers strategy. Your enemies were listening. Several of them were very interested in those coordinates. Your fleet is currently dealing with let me check my mental notes. 3 separate engagements in 3 different sectors. They are a bit busy. This is madness, Quilnera said, her vines trembling. Even if you have temporarily gained a tactical advantage, you cannot possibly what? Marcus interrupted. Win? Hold this position? Make the entire galaxy question whether the big scary empire is actually competent? Ambassador, we are not here to conquer Cronus Prime, we are here to make a point. I was recording every second of this. My fingers were trembling on the controls, but my equipment was solid. This was history. This was the moment the balance of galactic power shifted, and it was happening live on a crystalline stage in front of 100 billion viewers. Thornex attempted to regain some authority. The Council will never surrender to a terrorist action. We represent 47 civilized systems. Marcus laughed again. That same genuine sound, that should not have been possible under these circumstances. Chancellor, you still do not get it. I am not asking you to surrender. I am demonstrating that your empire is held together with propaganda and intimidation, and both of those things stop working when everyone sees you get outmaneuvered by one guy who let himself get captured on purpose. The tactical display was painting a very clear picture now. Human ships had complete orbital superiority. They could have fired at any moment. They could have bombarded the amphitheater, the command centers, the shipyards. They were not. They were just sitting there, a silent threat, waiting. What do you want? Veshkara asked. And there it was. The question that meant she had lost. And everyone watching across 99 star systems knew it. Marcus pointed at the cameras at the billions of beings watching. I want them to see that you are not invincible. I want every species you have threatened, every world you have bullied, every colony you have annexed to know that humans, primitive humans from the edge of nowhere, just turned your biggest propaganda moment into our recruitment video. He was right. I could see it happening in real time on my social feed monitors. The subject worlds, the species under Imperial control, they were watching this. They were seeing the mighty Galactic Council rendered helpless by a single soldier and a well-executed plan. Revolutions have started with less. Cut the power to the broadcast systems, Veshkara ordered desperately. Manually, pull the physical connections. A technician's voice came through. Commander, if we do that, the human encryption triggers a default protocol. It will dump our entire tactical database onto the open networks. Fleet positions, defense codes, everything. Marcus nodded approvingly. See, someone was paying attention during the technical briefing. 103 systems now. The number kept climbing. Species that had stayed neutral, that had avoided galactic politics. They were all watching. The Empire's carefully constructed image of inevitable dominance was crumbling in real time, and every second of it was being broadcast in high definition with excellent audio quality. Quilnara made one last attempt at diplomacy. If we negotiate, if we discuss terms, will you call off your fleet? Ambassador, Marcus said, his voice suddenly tired, suddenly very human. We have been trying to negotiate for 3 years. You responded with battleships and ultimatums. So no negotiation. Instead, you are going to sit here, on this very pretty stage, and you are going to wait while every being in the galaxy watches and wonders why the great galactic empire cannot stop human from completely ruining their day. Veshkara's scales had gone pale. Thornex had settled into a defeated gray. Quilnara's vines drooped. I checked the viewership counter one more time. 107 systems. The Empire had wanted to make an example of humanity. Mission accomplished, just not the way they intended. The explosion came from the eastern wall of the amphitheater, which was technically the northern wall depending on which Cronus rotational axis you were using, But that seems like a minor detail when half of a ceremonial structure just stopped being solid and started being rubble. The blast was precise, controlled, and had clearly been calculated by someone who understood both architecture and dramatic timing. Through the smoke and debris, figures emerged. Human figures, plural. They moved with the kind of fluid coordination that made my species' military drills look like interpretive dance performed by drunken morphids. 5 of them, wearing armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, carrying weapons that hummed with an energy signature I had never seen before. The lead figure pulled off her helmet. She was human, female by their biology, with dark hair pulled back and an expression that suggested she had been waiting her entire life for this exact moment. "Marcus," she called out, her voice carrying easily across the chaos. "You done monologuing, or should we come back later?" Marcus grinned. "Captain Rivera. Always a pleasure. Your timing is impeccable as usual. We have been in position for 20 minutes, Rivera replied, moving across the crystalline stage with her team. "You were having too much fun. I could hear you through the comm link." One of the crow-losing guards, the massive 4-armed ones who had dragged Marcus onto the stage, attempted to intervene. He got approximately 3 steps before a human soldier, this one built like a granite lord but moving with 10 times the speed, intercepted him. The guard outweighed the human by probably 500 pounds. Did not matter. The human, whose name tag read Okonkwo, executed a move that I am fairly certain violated at least 2 laws of physics and several more laws of decency. The guard hit the ground so hard the crystalline stage cracked. "Sergeant Okonkwo sends his regards," Marcus said to Veshkara, who was backing away slowly. "He has been wanting to meet your guards ever since they broke his teammate's arm during the ambush at Helix Station." Okonkwo waved cheerfully. He was still standing on the unconscious guard. The remaining Imperial forces, and there were at least 40 of them stationed around the amphitheater, suddenly found themselves in a very complex tactical situation. They were trained for security, for crowd control, for looking intimidating while wearing ceremonial armor. They were not trained for dealing with human special forces who had apparently been planning this operation down to the second. A squad of Saurian soldiers attempted to rush the stage. Rivera did not even look at them. She made a small gesture with her left hand, and 2 of her team members moved to intercept. What followed was not so much a fight, as it was a demonstration of why humans had evolved as pursuit predators. The Saurians were fast, strong, and well-armed. The humans were faster, more efficient, and had clearly been holding a grudge. It was over in seconds. The Saurians were on the ground, disarmed, and thoroughly humiliated. None of them were seriously injured, which was almost worse. It meant the humans had been playing with them. "Status?" Rivera asked, scanning the amphitheater with professional calm. "All hostiles neutralized," one of her team replied. "Perimeter secure. Orbital assets are in position. Command is standing by for extraction." Marcus stretched, rolling his shoulders again. "See, Commander Veshkara, this is what I mean about human military doctrine. You brought me to the most heavily fortified location on your capital world, surrounded me with guards, and broadcast my position to the entire galaxy. From a human perspective, you basically gave us a map, an invitation, and a spotlight." Veshkara was shaking now, not from fear, I realized, but from rage. The kind of rage that comes from understanding you have been played from the very beginning. "You will never leave this planet alive." "Probably not," Marcus agreed, "except we brought 3 assault carriers, 2 destroyer escorts, and enough jamming equipment to blind every sensor on Cronus Prime. Also, and this is my favorite part, your orbital defense grid just received updated targeting protocols from a very helpful technician who definitely was not a human intelligence operative. Those defense platforms, they are currently pointing at each other." Whoops. High Chancellor Thornex had collapsed into a vapor puddle of defeat. Quilnara was trying very hard to look neutral, but I noticed her vines were relaxing. In fact, I noticed something else. The audience, the representatives from dozens of species, they were not trying to help, they were just watching. Some of them, particularly the delegates from worlds the Empire had annexed in the past decade, looked almost pleased. The Clarexian ambassador was clicking his mandibles in what I recognized as suppressed laughter. The Viridian counselor from the outer territories had her communication tendrils active, probably sending messages back home. Even the Granite Lords, usually staunch Imperial supporters, were rumbling amongst themselves in tones that suggested reappraisal of certain political alliances. "Extraction in 2 minutes," Rivera announced. She looked at Marcus. You good to move? Been sitting in a cell for 6 weeks, Marcus replied. I am fantastic. Okonkwo pulled a package from his equipment pack and tossed it to Marcus. Brought your jacket. Figured you would want it. Marcus caught it one-handed, pulled it on. It was a pilot's jacket, worn leather with patches from various human military units. On the back was embroidered text in English, which my translator rendered as FAFO Squadron. I did not understand the reference, but Marcus clearly treasured it. 1 minute, Rivera said. Orbital window is closing. Veshkara made one last desperate grab for authority. You cannot escape. Even if you reach orbit, our fleets will hunt you across the galaxy. Marcus paused at the edge of the stage. Commander, your fleets are currently scattered across 6 sectors dealing with problems that mysteriously appeared the moment you dragged me onto the stage. Your allies are reconsidering their commitments. Your subject species are watching and wondering why they should stay loyal. And all of this, every single second, is still being broadcast to 112 star systems. He turned to face the cameras one final time. To everyone watching, humanity says hello. We did not want this war. We asked for peace. We offered trade. We tried negotiation. You chose violence. So we showed you what humans do best. We adapt. We improvise. We turn your strengths into weaknesses and your victories into traps. And we do it all with a smile. He smiled, proving his point. If any other species out there is tired of the Empire telling them what to do, where to go, how to live, well, you know where to find us. Earth is always accepting applications for friendship. Fair warning though, we are weird. We argue constantly and our food will probably confuse you, but we are loyal to our friends, and we really do not like bullies. Rivera tapped his shoulder. Time to go. The human team formed up, professional and efficient. They moved as one unit toward the breach in the wall. Okonkwo was the last to leave. He turned, gave a crisp salute to the stunned council members and followed his team. Marcus paused at the threshold. Oh, and Commander, thanks for the stage. Best platform we could have asked for. Could not have planned it better myself. Wait, actually I did plan it exactly this way. Never mind. And then they were gone, disappearing into the smoke and chaos like ghosts. Within seconds I heard the sound of human aircraft, the whine of engines that should not have been able to penetrate Cronus Prime's defense network but somehow had. Within minutes they would be off-planet, protected by their fleet, broadcasting their success to the entire galaxy. I looked around the amphitheater. The damage was minimal. Surprisingly, a few broken walls, some unconscious guards, and one shattered empire. Veshkara stood alone on the crystalline stage, her scales dull, her posture defeated. The cameras were still rolling. 115 systems were still watching. And I had recorded every single moment. The broadcast continued. Of course it did. Marcus had been telling the truth about the encryption protocols. Every attempt to shut down the system just triggered more failsafes, more automatic overrides. The technicians were frantically working on it, but I suspected they would be working on it for hours, maybe days. By then it would not matter. The damage, as humans would say, was done. I watched my slate as the human dropships cleared the atmosphere. They were not even being subtle about it anymore. The escape trajectory was visible on every tactical screen, broadcast on every channel. The human fleet formed an escort pattern. Their weapons hot but not firing. They did not need to fire. The threat was enough. The humiliation was complete. 122 systems watching now. The number had stopped climbing, but only because we had reached saturation. Everyone who had access to galactic networks was tuned in. This was no longer news. This was history, happening live, and nobody wanted to miss the conclusion. Vesha finally moved. She walked slowly to the center of the crystalline stage, standing in the exact spot where Marcus had been just minutes before. She looked directly into the nearest camera, her scales a dull gray that spoke of defeat and exhaustion. The broadcast will be terminated shortly, she said, her voice lacking any of its earlier authority. This incident will be investigated. Those responsible will be punished. The Empire remains strong. The Empire endures. Nobody believed her. I could see it in the social feeds, in the analytical reports flooding my slate, in the body language of the representatives still seated in the amphitheater. The Morphids were quivering with barely contained excitement. The Clarixians were openly celebrating. Even the usually neutral observers from the Outer Rim territories were transmitting messages about reconsidering certain treaties and trade agreements. High Chancellor Thornex attempted damage control. His vapor body had returned to a pale blue, the color of desperate diplomacy. This was an isolated terrorist action. A cowardly attack that proves humanity's barbarism. The Council will respond with appropriate force. Except he would not. We all knew he would not. The humans had just demonstrated they could penetrate the Empire's most secure location, extract their operative, and leave without firing a shot in anger. Any retaliation would require resources the Empire no longer had positioned correctly, trust from allies that was evaporating in real time, and a reputation for invincibility that had just been shattered on live television. My slate pinged with an alert. The first rebellion had started. The colonies in the Tertius sector, 3 worlds that had been annexed 15 years ago, had just declared independence. Their message was brief, pointed, and referenced Marcus's speech about humanity accepting applications for friendship. They were not even asking for human military support. They were just done being afraid. Another alert. The Zephyrian Confederacy, a loose alliance of trading worlds, had just withdrawn their ambassadors from Cronus Prime. They cited concerns about the Empire's ability to maintain stable governance. Diplomatic language for "we do not want to be associated with losers." Another alert. The Viridian Council was calling for an emergency session to discuss the validity of Imperial annexation treaties, legal language for "we see blood in the water and we are lawyers." It was cascading, collapsing. The entire political structure of the Galactic Empire was coming apart because one human soldier had let himself get captured, had endured weeks of imprisonment, had stood on a stage and smiled while dismantling the illusion of Imperial power. Ambassador Quilnara was already making quiet exits toward the diplomatic shuttles. I noticed several other representatives doing the same. Nobody wanted to be on Cronus Prime when the inevitable happened. Nobody wanted to be associated with this disaster. I filed my final report, timestamped and encrypted. Future historians would argue about this day. They would debate Marcus's tactics, question the ethics of using propaganda against propagandists, write lengthy academic papers about asymmetric warfare and psychological operations. They would make it complicated because that is what academics do. But the truth was simple. Humans had been pushed, and they had pushed back in the most human way possible. They had not conquered. They had not destroyed. They had embarrassed. They had humiliated. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength, its control of information and image, into its greatest weakness. The broadcast finally cut out. 127 systems had watched. Billions of beings had seen the mighty Galactic Empire reduced to confused officials standing on a cracked stage, making empty threats to cameras that nobody believed anymore. I packed up my recording equipment, secured my data slate, and prepared to file the most important historical document of my career. The archive would preserve this moment forever. The Empire dragged a human soldier on stage, and the universe watched him win. As I left the amphitheater, I passed a group of young Saurian officers. They were watching a replay on a handheld device, reviewing the human tactics, analyzing the operation. One of them noticed me watching. "Do you think," he asked quietly, "that we are on the wrong side?" I did not answer. Archivists maintain neutrality, but I thought about Marcus's smile, about Rivera's precision, about Okonkwo standing on that guard with cheerful professionalism. I thought about a species that had been dismissed as primitive, as aggressive, as unworthy of respect. They had not asked for this war. They had not wanted galactic attention. They had simply wanted to be left alone, and when that was not an option, they had adapted. They had planned. They had executed an operation so audacious, so perfectly calibrated, that it would be studied in military academies for generations. The final irony, the piece that made me appreciate human psychology in ways I never had before, was this. Marcus could have escaped at any time. The human fleet had been in position for weeks. They could have extracted him from his cell, could have blown a hole in the prison, could have done a dozen different tactical insertions, but that would not have changed anything. The Empire would have spun it as a prison break, a minor embarrassment, a footnote in their grand narrative. So instead they waited. They let the Empire capture their soldier. They let Veshkura plan her grand spectacle. They let the Council build the stage, arrange the cameras, invite the galaxy to watch, and then they used all of it, every single element, to broadcast their message to 127 star systems. Humans did not just fight wars, they told stories. And they had just told the entire galaxy a story about what happens when you underestimate them. I reached my transport, uploaded my files to the archive's secure servers, and sat back in my seat. My job was documentation, preservation of historical truth. Today, I had documented the end of an era. The Galactic Empire would continue to exist, technically for several more years, but it would never be the same. The fear was gone. The illusion was shattered. All because of one human soldier, one crystalline stage and one very well-executed plan. As my transport lifted off, I saw the first fires starting in the lower city. Riots or celebrations, I could not tell. Probably both. Change was coming. Messy and inevitable and human-inspired. I made a mental note to update my resume. When the Empire finally collapsed, and it would collapse now, archivists with detailed records of what actually happened would be in high demand. The humans had taught the galaxy an important lesson today. Power was not about who had the biggest fleet or the most territory. Power was about who controlled the narrative, and for one perfect afternoon, broadcast across 127 star systems, humanity had controlled the narrative completely. Veshikara had wanted to make an example of Marcus Chen. Mission accomplished. Just not the example she intended. I checked my slate one final time. The recording was secure, backed up, distributed across multiple archive nodes. This story would survive. Future generations would watch Marcus smile, would hear his sarcasm, would see the moment when everything changed. And they would ask the same question the young Saurian officer had asked me. Are we on the wrong side? The humans had an expression for what they did today. I had researched it after hearing Marcus mention it. Thafo, find out after. Finding out. No, that was not quite right. The translation was giving me trouble. I pulled up the etymology file.
Oh?
Oh, that was much better. The humans had just demonstrated in front of the entire galaxy. What happens when you mess around and find out? Elegant, efficient, absolutely terrifying. I made another note for future historians: when dealing with humans, always remember that they are better at improvisation than you are at planning. They are better at chaos than you are at order. And they are much better at turning your victories into their opportunities. The Empire had dragged a human soldier onto a stage. The universe had watched him win, and nothing would ever be the same.